In medieval Europe, kings did not fear battlefields as much as they feared taverns. Because inside these filthy, smoke-filled rooms, power was plotted, rebellions were whispered, and crowns quietly fell. Taverns were not just places to drink. They were surveillance hubs, political pressure valves, and unofficial courts of the people. And every ruler knew one truth: control the tavern or lose the throne. Welcome to MBN Story. Here, we uncover the real history hidden behind everyday places. Today's story reveals how medieval taverns, dirty, loud, and chaotic, quietly shaped royal power, rebellion, and the fate of kingdoms. Now, let's begin. Taverns were the internet of the Middle Ages. To understand medieval taverns, you must forget modern pubs. Between the 12th and 15th centuries, taverns were public communication networks. Most Europeans could not read. Church sermons were controlled. Royal proclamations were rare and slow. But taverns were everywhere. In London alone, records from the late 14th century list more than 300 licensed alehouses. These figures appear in the letterbooks of the City of London, preserved in municipal archives. Paris showed similar patterns, especially near markets and river crossings like the Pont au Change, where traders and travelers met daily. This mattered because information traveled with alcohol. Merchants spoke about new taxes. Soldiers complained about unpaid wages. Messengers repeated rumors from royal courts. Foreign travelers brought news from other kingdoms. Historians such as Barbara Hannawalt and Gervais Rosser described taverns as places where political awareness formed among ordinary people. That frightened rulers. Why kings regulated taverns so aggressively? Medieval governments did not regulate taverns for morality. They regulated them for control. In England, King Edward III issued multiple tavern ordinances during the mid-14th century, especially during the 100 Years' War. Royal records show tavern keepers were required to sell ale at fixed prices, close at set hours, and report disorderly behavior. The concern was not drunkenness. It was dissent. Soldiers returning from France gathered in taverns and openly criticized the crown. This alarmed royal officials. Taverns during the Black Death. When the Black Death swept through Europe between 1347 and 1351, taverns became centers of anger and fear. After nearly half of England's population died, labor became scarce. Workers demanded higher wages. The Crown responded with the Statute of Laborers in 1351, freezing wages by law. People protested where they felt safe. In taverns, court rolls from Essex and Kent record alehouses fined for hosting unlawful gatherings. These were not violent crimes. They were crimes of speech. How taverns helped spark the Peasants Revolt. In 1381, England erupted. The Peasants' Revolt did not begin in palaces or parliaments. It began in village alehouses. Chroniclers like Thomas Walsingham recorded rebels gathering after drinking together before marching toward London. Tax collectors enforcing the poll tax were confronted after tavern-fueled discussions. King Richard II survived the revolt, but he never forgot where it started. After the Peasants' Revolt of 1381, medieval rulers learned a dangerous lesson. Taverns could ignite rebellion, but they could also be used as tools of control. By the late 14th and early 15th centuries, many taverns were quietly owned or financed by nobles, monasteries, or royal officials. This is not speculation. Property records from England, France, and the Holy Roman Empire show tavern licenses often held by individuals closely connected to local lords. In London, historians have traced alehouse ownership to members of the urban elite, including aldermen and guild leaders. Why did elites want taverns? Because taverns collected people, money, and information in one place. Taverns as informal intelligence centers. Medieval states had no professional police forces. Instead, they relied on observation and informants. Tavern keepers were perfect for this role. They saw who met whom. They heard who complained about taxes. They noticed strangers asking questions. City statutes often required innkeepers to report suspicious talk. Taverns were the only places where common people spoke freely. Why alcohol made taverns dangerous. Alcohol lowered fear. A peasant might stay silent in church. He might bow before a noble. But after several cups of ale, he spoke honestly. Medieval chroniclers understood this well. The English writer William Langland, in Piers Plowman, described taverns as places where truth slipped out through drunken tongues. Authorities agreed. That is why tavern laws often targeted speech, not violence. People were arrested for seditious words, not for fighting, not for stealing, but for talking. Taverns and mercenary recruitment taverns also served another royal function: recruitment. During the 100 Years' War, soldiers were often hired informally. Recruiters targeted taverns near ports, markets, and city gates. Records from Calais, Bruges, and London show taverns used as meeting points for mercenary contracts. Men drank, talked. This worried rulers too. Unpaid soldiers drinking together could turn into mobs. That is why some kings ordered taverns near barracks to close early during wartime. Church versus tavern. A silent war, the medieval church hated taverns. Not just for sin, but for competition. Church sermons were controlled narratives. Taverns were uncontrolled. Priests complained that people believed tavern gossip more than sermons. This appears in multiple ecclesiastical complaints from the 13th and 14th centuries. Yet monasteries themselves often brewed beer. This hypocrisy was not lost on the population. Taverns became places where people openly mocked priests and questioned authority. That made them politically dangerous. Why royal councils feared taverns more than weapons. A sword could kill a man, but tavern talk could move thousands. Rulers understood that ideas spread faster than armies, and taverns spread ideas cheaply. That is why taverns were never fully banned. They were too useful and too necessary. Instead, rulers watched them closely. By the 5th-10th century, rulers no longer underestimated taverns. They feared them. Because tavern rumors had begun to shape royal decisions, alter wars, and even influence assassinations. This was not imagination. It was recorded by royal clerks, chroniclers, and city courts. Taverns and the fall of Richard II. King Richard II of England did not fall only because of nobles. He fell because public opinion turned against him. In the 1390s, complaints about heavy taxation, favoritism, and royal extravagance spread rapidly. Chroniclers like Henry Knighton and Adam of Usk noted that criticism circulated widely among the commons. Where did it spread fastest? In taverns. By 1399, when Henry Bolingbroke returned from exile, tavern conversations already framed him as a restorer of order. This narrative did not begin in court. It began among drinkers, merchants, and soldiers. When Richard was deposed, there was no mass uprising to save him. Silence can be fatal. French taverns and the madness of Charles VI. In France, taverns also carried dangerous stories. During the reign of Charles VI, known as Charles the Mad, rumors about the king's illness spread quickly through Parisian wine shops. Court attempts to hide his mental breakdowns failed. Parisians discussed royal weakness openly in taverns near Les Halles and along the Seine. This weakened trust in the monarchy. Historians studying Parisian police records from the early 1400s show increased monitoring of taverns during moments of royal instability. The crown feared panic, and panic traveled with wine. The Burgundian-Armagnac conflict began over drinks. The French civil conflict between the Burgundians and Armagnacs did not start with armies. It started with insults, rumors, and threats. Parisian taverns became ideological battlegrounds. Supporters of each faction gathered separately, spreading accusations and justifications. By 1407, the assassination of Louis of Orleans shocked France. But by then, tavern talk had already prepared the public to accept violence. The blade followed the bottle. Why assassins used taverns? Assassins did not hide in shadows. They waited in taverns. Medieval murder trials reveal that killers often gathered intelligence in alehouses. They listened, observed routines, tracked movements. In Florence, court records from the 15th century show taverns used by political conspirators before attacks during periods of factional violence. Taverns provided anonymity, noise, and alcohol loosened tongues. In moments of crisis, rulers acted fast. Control rumors, control morale. Why kings avoided taverns themselves. Not because of dignity, because taverns were unpredictable. A drunk insult could become a riot. Royal presence meant risk. Power was safest at a distance. By the late 15th century, medieval taverns had done something extraordinary. They had survived kings. They had outlasted plagues. They had endured church condemnation. And in doing so, they quietly reshaped power itself. From taverns to the birth of public opinion, before taverns, power flowed one way, from the throne downward. After taverns, power echoed back. Rulers began to realize that authority depended not only on armies or laws, but on what people believed. And belief formed in conversation. Medieval taverns created something new, public opinion. This idea did not yet have a name, but rulers felt it. By the early 16th century, governments across Europe openly acknowledged that rumors could destabilize kingdoms. State papers from England, France, and the Holy Roman Empire increasingly reference common talk and public voice. Those voices were born in taverns. The transition from taverns to coffeehouses. As medieval Europe faded, taverns evolved. In England and the Netherlands, taverns gradually gave way to coffeehouses during the 17th century. But the function remained the same. People gathered, spoke freely, criticized rulers. Historians often credit coffeehouses with shaping modern democracy. But coffeehouses inherited their power directly from medieval taverns. The filth changed. The drink changed. The danger remained. Why rulers never solved the tavern problem? Kings tried everything. Licenses, spies, curfews, price controls. None worked fully. Because taverns were not the problem. Human nature was. People need places to speak freely, to complain, to bond, to resist. Taverns provided that space long before newspapers, parliaments, or voting booths. And rulers could never eliminate them without collapsing their own economies. The great irony of royal power here is the irony history leaves us. The same kings who feared taverns depended on them. Messengers rested there. Taxes were collected there. Soldiers were recruited there. Royal news spread there. Taverns undermined authority and supported it at the same time. Why medieval taverns still matter today? Modern governments monitor social media. Medieval kings monitored taverns. Different tools, same fear. Uncontrolled conversation. The filthy taverns of the Middle Ages were not primitive mistakes of history. They were early versions of the public sphere. Messy, dangerous, powerful.